Welcome, everybody. This is Rich J. Tilley, the author of Way Too Unsubstantiated. Welcome to the Driving 2 chapters. It's a sequel. In my first book, I had a chapter called Driving in Unsubstantiated Advice from a Middle-Aged Man. I use this advice myself every day. I have to. I live in a city. We used to take pride about a decade ago saying we could get anywhere we wanted to in this beautiful city in about 20 minutes. Not anymore. We've had about 200 to 300,000 people move into this town, and I'm telling you, it is now turned into an all-American city, just like Chicago, New York, and LA. The traffic is a nightmare. It's busy in the morning. It's busy at 1 o'clock. It's busy in the evening. Rush hour goes from 4:30 to 6:30 now for 2 hours straight. You can't get anywhere. There's people always behind you, always in your way. And what they like to do in this town is they like to run right up the back of you. Some of the most impatient drivers I've ever seen. You know, they drive so close. I mean, hasn't anybody ever heard of the 2-second rule? You know what that is, right? So if you were the car behind, you would pick a stationary object of the car in front as it goes by and see how long it takes you to pass it to see if you're following a safe distance. You're supposed to go 1, 2. No, not in this town. They couldn't even get the first syllable out of one. It'd be like, what? That's how close they are following the back bumper. I mean, don't they realize that if you hit somebody from behind, it is your own fault? They do that on the interstates too. You know, when you're in the fast lane and you're someone's right behind you and you're waiting for a gap on the right-hand side to get over, and a gap develops and you're like, okay, I'm just going to get over to let this guy go by. No, they're already there in the right-hand lane trying to pass you. They're driving so dangerously. I see a rear end accident every single day in this town now. Every day. You know what you've done by driving so crazy and dangerously? You've raised my insurance rates. Now I got to pay more money for that because you're driving like a moron. Anyway, let me calm down a bit and get into this driving chapter because I guess I got to read it. I feel like the advice in this driving chapter and the driving chapter in my previous book is worth the price of admission. This book costs $10. This could help you avoid an accident and avoid a deductible payment for your insurance company. Let's say $500. That's $500 divided by a $10 book. That's 50 times the value. And heck, if you got $1,000 deductible, that's 100 times the value you receive from what you paid for it. And God forbid it saves your life. You can't really put a value on that, can you? Some of this information we just went over is in the book. Other parts are not, so consider that content bonus material on YouTube only. You're welcome. But let's dive in to the original words of Driving 2. Welcome to part 2 of our driving habits topic. We will be discussing common scenarios that we run into on the roads and highways. I hope some of you had the opportunity to practice several accident-avoiding tidbits of advice from the original driving chapter in the first unsubstantiated handbook. Let's add a few more nuggets of knowledge to our repertoire today by introducing some new stuff, shall we? My quest is that this second installment will make us all much better drivers. That's if, and only if, you implement, not just glance over, the upcoming outstanding advice. We are going to kick off this chapter by play acting, pretending like we are the hiring manager for the XYZ company. The scene? A job seeker has just arrived for their scheduled interview to compete for one of our available positions. Sitting across from our desk is our job candidate, known for being brutally honest, and we are presenting our opening questions to get to know them a little. We ask the interviewee, "So tell me a little bit about yourself," equipped with, "How would you best describe your own personality?" The interviewee begins to speak Very frankly. Thank you for asking. They briefly ponder over their upcoming answer. How would I sum up me? Well, let's see. I guess I'm not super smart, and my friends tell me I can be a bit hot headed at times, somewhat unpredictable, and pretty moody. I am an extremely impatient person, very selfish, and I only look out for myself. I don't really think about the future much, so therefore I don't like to plan ahead. I am easily distracted and terribly unfocused at times, often finding myself staring at my cell phone, making multiple comments on all my multiple social media sites. I have to admit, I do talk on the phone a lot, even at work, too. We stare in bewilderment as the interviewee blabbers on, taken back by their alarming disclosures. They continue with their answer. Also, I think I might have an addiction to texting. One thing I know I'm proficient at, though, is I always text a person back right away when I receive one. I can't stand it when people don't text me back. Furthermore, I would say that I am shamefully disorganized, disgustingly messy, and would admit that I am not a very perceptive person. I am usually completely unaware of my surroundings, trudging through life in a daze. On top of these things, I have habitually made very poor decisions. I fly by the seat of my pants without caring about any consequences that could come my way. I have a hard time critically thinking through important situations. Oh, and one more thing. I prefer to blame others for all my mistakes, taking absolutely no accountability for my actions. Is that enough? I probably said too much, huh? So, how did they do? If you were the interviewer, would you hire this person? Would you be excited to have this person join the XYZ team? I hope not. Or you may have some decision making flaws yourself. Why did I begin this driving chapter with a hypothetical make believe interview skit? First of all, I know the whole thing is unrealistic. No one would ever talk about themselves this candidly in the presence of an interviewer, unless they were trying to not get the job. But I wrote the passage to make a point. We may not and should not hire this candidate, but we do allow and permit people with these exact character liabilities to have keys to a vehicle every day, don't we? Scary. Anyone that somehow passes their driver's test can sit behind the wheel of an automobile, can't they? These disturbing personalities, similar to my mock interviewee, are the ones that we have to deal with on a regular basis, creating unnecessary safety issues on our roads. Did everyone reading this see an accident scene today? Or maybe yesterday? Is there any surprise that we may have with these deplorable folks littered all over the roads? It would be nice if the universally recognized driving skills test consisted of a comprehensive personality evaluation instead, wouldn't it? I can imagine the outbursts heard all over the testing center. What? Why? I failed the test? How come? We have a talk bubble by Ed. He says, because you're an inconsiderate moron. That's why. And if or when this person does eventually pass the evaluation exam, it should be mandatory and law for them to drive with this warning sticker displayed on their back bumper for the good of all mankind. It's a yellow sticker and it says, please be patient. I'm a moron. Now that I have peppered you with some light humor, let's get to the real meat and potatoes. Being considered a highly skilled and talented driver takes above average intelligence, sound decision-making skills, seeing ahead vision, and a pocket full of patience. As a good driver, we need to be aware of our surroundings and possess the ability to predict all possible outcomes. In Unsubstantiated, I discussed the importance of practicing defensive driving skills and mentioned we can't change the personalities of all the poor drivers on our roads, but we can learn the skills necessary to avoid the repercussions from their erratic driving behavior. How do we become a better driver? Let's have a little fun. I will now reference one of my favorite Hollywood blockbuster movie series, The Terminator, portrayed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. In each one of these franchise films, certain iconic scenes showed the viewing audience what the current version of the Terminator was seeing through its machine-like eyes. The futuristic robot's internal computerized system would be scanning all around, looking for breathing things that give off red glowing heat inside its face display. This surveillance gave the machine valid information in order to know who or what it has to kill. Everything in close proximity to the Terminator was being analyzed with digital data simultaneously and being reported back to its internal computer to advise how the cyborg machine needed to react to its surroundings with lightning efficiency. This enthusiastic passage above describing how the Terminator operates is how we must all drive on the roads. However, rather than scanning for red heat, we should be constantly scanning through our own human eyes for potential danger spots and specific situations where we should slow down as not to place ourselves or our vehicle into the fray. If we observe chaos up ahead, we should back down our speed, pull over, or quickly plan another route to avoid trouble. My best example that I can think of here is when we are driving through a row of vehicles in an open air parking lot, leaving for the exit. We've all been in this scenario before. In this familiar situation, we should be frantically scanning from one row to another, asking ourselves with anticipation, is there another vehicle about to back out of a filled parking spot? And pinpointing which vehicles do we see that have a person sitting in the driver's seat? Which vehicles are empty? Or we should be proactively scanning for clear white reverse tail lights, indicating that someone is about to back up into our narrow passing lane. We should be looking to the left, looking to the right, and back to the left again. Our eyes should be darting around from side to side, while at the same time cautiously maintaining a slower speed, foot hovering over the brake until we're out of danger. To be a defensive driver, we have to drop into a machine-like mode like the Terminator. Furthermore, there should never be a time when we are driving over 25 miles per hour through a parking lot. Never. Listen to me. Do this advice. No more accidents in parking lots and parking garages. I have an emphasis bar here. It says the key to safe defensive driving and avoiding danger in a congested space is to become the Terminator behind the wheel. Highly congested, busy roads and streets can have many obstacles in our paths, such as vehicles constantly stopping in front of us, making sharp turns without warning, vehicles turning into oncoming traffic out of shopping centers, and many intersections with red lights causing a stoppage in the natural flow of traffic. If we find ourselves driving in hectic areas like this, we must drop into our cyborg robot mode. Our brains need to be constantly processing data on high alert mode scanning for developing potential hazards. As we conduct this preventative reconnaissance, we must be recognizing all the potential danger spots. Alarms should be going off inside our heads, similar to what takes place in an airplane cockpit when things are going drastically wrong, like the warning indicators when an aircraft is losing air pressure and altitude. We should be hearing buzzes go off or pretend loud noises screaming at us, "Warning! Warning! Please proceed with caution." Images of signs flashing the words, "You must slow your speed." We have to drive like programmed machines. Become a human terminator. The complex computer on board in our cockpit is our intelligent human brains. Let's discuss driving on the highways. On most of the densely driven interstates or motorways, the speeds of traveling vehicles are obviously much faster. However, there should be less chances of an accident happening in this environment than on a busy city street. On open space highways, there is usually more freedom to keep out of the way from the other vehicles. Over the years, I have found a method to drive safely and to avoid traffic speeding violations. I like to call it driving in the safety pocket. Please enjoy the illustration. We have a picture here of an interstate, and there's a car in the slower lane, kind of out of the way of everybody. Around the car is a yellow box, and a red arrow pointing towards the yellow box saying safety pocket. It's probably beneficial to everyone to go out and buy a paperback or digital copy of this book so you can see these amazing illustrations. This picture should also help folks from other countries reading this passage who all drive on the opposite side of the road to the United States. If this pertains to you, please hold this image in the mirror while you read the rest of this to digest this tutelage a little better. And just note that every time I say left lane, I mean right lane, and vice versa. And each time I say right, I mean left. I don't want any of my loyal readers getting lost or left behind. Got it? Right, let's continue. In the United States, a large majority of the time when we travel outside of the metropolitan areas, the interstates usually contract from 3 lanes down to 2, a fast lane on the left and a slower lane on the right. Some folks prefer to drive in the outside left lane at faster speeds of 10 to 15 miles per hour above the designated speed limit, and all the power to them. Traffic is usually staggered, with many of the 72 feet long big rig semi-trucks taking up space in the slower right-hand lane. Problems develop when certain vehicles are cruising along in the fast lane that are perceived to be not quite fast enough for the drivers coming up behind them at a rapid pace. The speedy drivers try to get around the obstacle that is blocking them by passing the slower moving vehicles illegally to the right, then cutting back over to the left. Often these impatient hotheads purposely miss the slower moving vehicle's front bumper by just a few inches, and then, seething from their ears with bright red faces, express their displeasure over the situation with a stiffly raised middle finger gesture, mouthing foul language that would even make a 1930s weather-beaten sailor cringe. I have an emphasis bar. It says the posted highway speed limits should not dictate the flow of traffic. Instead, the overall speed personality of all the drivers combined should dictate how fast everyone should be driving. Numerous interstate road environments across the USA have diverse personalities and characteristics themselves. It is a known fact that different folks have different strokes. People in certain U.S. states like to drive faster than others. As an example, the residents in the state of Michigan drive really fast. I mean really fast. If you are visiting the Wolverine state, be prepared to drive around 80 to 85 miles per hour, or most of the drivers around you will try to run you off the road. Texas is quite frankly a ginormous state containing vast open terrain with a massive horizon dissipating off into the distance for miles. The Lone Star State has some of the highest posted legal speed limits of 85 miles per hour. Therefore, in Texas, people naturally drive faster here also. Drivers in some of the smaller, fresh air, free living states like Vermont and New Hampshire are not in any particular hurry to go anywhere or do anything. I think everyone that lives in this part of New England is retired or just taking things easy, possibly living 3 or 4 decades behind the rest of us. Cruising at the formerly nationally mandated speed limit of 55 miles per hour from the 1970s on these picturesque country roads is preferred by the locals. In my opinion, whichever interstate you might find yourself traveling on, I have discovered that it is best to drive in the slower right-hand lane when possible, about 5 vehicle lengths behind the next closest driver. This is what I refer to as the safety pocket. Please go back and look at the previous illustration. If a specified driver in front of me is driving about 72 miles per hour, I will lock in behind them and drive the same 72 miles per hour myself. If I find myself behind a vehicle traveling at 78 miles an hour, I will drive the exact same 78 miles per hour. Drifting, almost like a professional NASCAR race car driver. I try to keep out of the way of the folks in the fast lane, unless I need to pass a vehicle in the slower right-hand lane that is driving a little too slow for my own comfort level. I have an emphasis bar here. It says if we witness an impatient driver changing lanes more than 3 times in 2 minutes on the interstate, we can correctly assume that they might be a poor driver. Changing lanes constantly on the highway or interstates is an indicator of an unstable, erratic, impatient, and irresponsible driver. In my assessment, this behavior is completely unnecessary and a waste of energy. When we are driving on any wide open roads with 2 lanes on our side, we should find a comfortable pocket in the right-hand slower lane and remain in this space until we have to adjust to road conditions. This is the yellow area in the illustration. I have been known to drive over 100 highway miles and switch lanes less than 3 times in 2 hours. I am of the belief that we should relax, activate the cruise control, watch the fields go by, and chill out. Why are we in such a hurry? We will get to where we are going eventually. Patience is a virtue. I have an emphasis bar here. It says the best part about the family road trip is the road trip itself, right? Take a chill pill. Enjoy the journey. We will get to our destination when we get there, alive. Locking into the safety pocket is also a wise and intelligent move because it will shelter us from any speeding violations. We might very well be traveling 10 miles above the posted legal speed limit, but so is the vehicle 5 lengths in front of us, right? The police are going to see them first, not our hidden vehicle. We are shielded behind them. Plus, the cops have enough to worry about with Speedy Gonzales blazing down the outside fast lane in their shiny red sports car, exposed for all the highway patrolmen to see. I feel like everyone should follow this advice and drive smarter and be more patient on the highways to become better drivers. No more, so there's no more accidents on the interstates. I have one final emphasis bar in this chapter. It says, wow, I am so impressed by how fast your high off the ground, husky, heavy duty pickup truck goes. I would like to end this chapter with a personal pet peeve of mine. Question: what is it with the guys in big new model pickup trucks on the interstates? Why do they insist on driving right up onto our back bumper in the outside fast lane, almost trying to push us off the road, to the point where we can see their fancy chrome grille and American truck brand symbol in our back window from our rearview mirror? Hey, back off, buddy. I'm getting over in a second, as soon as I can get by the slower car on my right. Would you just relax for 1 second? These pickup drivers must feel so domineering and mighty, sitting up so high with all that horsepower behind them. It's almost as if they need to drive a vehicle so very large and manly to compensate for something else they might own that isn't quite pulling the weight. An attachment between their legs that turned out rather flimsy, disappointing, and tiny. Slam! Unsubstantiated advice from a middle-aged man about driving. Defensive driving takes focus, intelligence, patience, and the ability to predict the road ahead. We must drive like the Terminator and drive in the safety pocket in order to avoid accidents and keep everyone around us safe. Am I right about this, or just half right? You're welcome.